Guitar Sessions. Hi, this is Rod, and today we're going to talk about my rock band program. So one of the things that I do is I teach rock band. It is an ensemble type of program to kids as well as adults as well as all ages. So level 3, we focus on improvisation, and I want to address that because some people are asking me, why do you want to learn improvisation? Well, because everything past punk rock, past the very basics of rock and roll and pop music about rock and roll requires you to learn how to improvise. All right? It is improvisation that has helped us create the riffs in the first place. It is improvisation that musicians get, and they get together and they jam in a room and they come up with different sounds. It is improvisations that we're playing with sound. We're not necessarily just playing with notes anymore. Okay? So learning how to improvise, it is an essential skill, has been an essential skill since the mid-60s for any rock-related guitar playing. All right? Now, it also means freedom. It is the kind of stuff that separates us from like what classical musicians and the classical approach to learning music. When you play a violin and you play for an orchestra, you don't have to be able to improvise. Okay? We're not playing in an orchestra. And I think one of the wonderful things about playing in a rock band is the fact that we can come up with our own notes, our own sounds, our own feels, and it's our own journey and how we learn how to play what we play. All right? It is about expression. It is about freedom. You do not have players like Jimi Hendrix, like Keith Richards, Mick Taylor, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Edward Van Halen, I said Jeff Beck, well, I could say Jeff Beck twice, Tony Iommi. The birth of heavy metal came through a jam session. When Tony Iommi solos, do you think he's composing the solo? No, he's not. Ritchie Blackmore never played the same solo twice. When Angus Young coming up with solo ideas when he's soloing, he probably does compose some of his solos. But where they started from is, let's jam this out and I'll come up with some ideas. David Gilmour, Pink Floyd. All the greats of rock and roll. Terry Kath of Chicago. Neil Schon of Journey. Carlos Santana. All the greats of guitar, all the greats of rock. Once we got past the garage element of it, when all we knew was a couple chords, and we tried to do our best with the couple chords, then we started working on how do I improvise and bringing in blues influences, American blues influences like Muddy Waters and Buddy Guy, and all these kinds of, all the Kings, Albert King, Freddie King, B.B. King. All the Kings were hugely important in early stages of rock and roll. Eric Clapton, that is the one thing that he has done, that if he has never did anything post 1968, he has showed us all that what we missed in the 60s was our own music. White America did not pay as much attention to the blues music of Chicago, of Texas, of jump blues. We weren't about that. We were about jangly guitars and Beatles. And the Beatles, the early Beatles, did not have these same kind of qualities. So, improvisation, what does it mean? Does it mean you just play random stuff and you're just fearless? No, it's not just random stuff, and you're not just fearless, because the way you practice your instrument, we work on How do we play in key? What are the tools that the masters use? What are the tools that the masters use? When we learn the tools that the masters use, it is not an impossible thing to play and to improvise. It is a language like any other. It is a language you can learn. All right? I get a kick out of all these things I read on Facebook that so-and-so doesn't know a lick of music theory. And I say, BS. So-and-so wasn't taught formally in music theory. So-and-so absolutely understands that this song is in this key, and if I'm going to solo and create a solo, it's got to be in that key. It's got to be in that key. He may approach music differently, and he may not know the names of the things that is going on. But Jimi Hendrix absolutely has a working knowledge of music theory, his own music theory, how to play in key. Jimi Hendrix did not just improvise and just play magical stuff, not knowing anything. And Jimi Hendrix wasn't a lazy human, and he wasn't a stupid person. He was a brilliant man. He wasn't lazy or uneducated. All right? So the idea of this music theory is not going to help us. It will help you. Now, in the rock band program, what I ask of my students is let's set the goal that we're going to learn to solo in the key of E minor or E7. That is our first goal. And that's all we're going to talk about today. Okay? We're going to talk about playing notes and playing phrases, things, exploration. Music is not just about putting forth the tablature, the exact notes that everybody else has already done. Certain things that's important. Sometimes you want to get the guy's exact riff. I get it. But that guy, if he's worth his salt, also knows how to elaborate on his own stuff. All right? He's not a tablature person who only does what, like the classical musician only plays what is written. Rock musicians shouldn't be that way. All right? That's just one level of rock. That is like the garage level, where we're learning how to play our parts. We're learning how to play our parts with the correct articulation and enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is important on all levels of rock, by the way. Okay? So that is a core skill in lower level. Play the riffs the way they should be played, certainly. But then understand that when you have Jimmy Page and that riff came out not because he wasn't a composer that broke out his quill pen and started writing out music. It came out of a jam. And so did all of Led Zeppelin 1. All right? When the Rolling Stones found their own sound. So when the Rolling Stones first started out, they sounded like a lot of other British invasion early 60s bands. Okay, they sounded like a kind of a mod thing. They loved the American rhythm and blues. They loved American blues. They even loved American rock and roll. Buddy Holly. So first albums of theirs were cover albums. All right? And the first albums of theirs, they didn't sound a lot different. Like a lot of the guitar tones were the same kinds of guitar tones that the Beatles would have. All right? They didn't find their sound until they started learning to improvise in the blues and vibe. Vibing's another lesson. We're not going to discuss that today. So the key of E minor. So when I say that, what I want to do is I want to be able to play in the key of E minor, and I want to be able to solo. I want to be able to solo in E minor, and I want to be able to play things that are not. I want to be able to explore. That is a higher level of rock of rock discipline. All right? So for when I say E minor, we can do lots of minor pentatonics. I say what we want to do is we want to learn how to really talk in the key of E minor, because thousands of rock and roll tunes are in the key of E. Once we learn that skill, can be applied to lots of things, lots of songs. So what we want to do is we got to learn the scale first. But if you do not improvise, you're just as square as the jazz musician who can't really get rock and roll because he tries to approach it from the jazz standpoint. In order to get rock and roll right, you have to learn to improvise as well. So, anyway, what we can do in the spirit of all this is let's check out what I refer to as taking inventory of the key of E minor. So that E minor scale, again, notes we can add to that. That B flat note makes it a blues scale. All right, that B flat. Now, as always, every time I'm learning new patterns and learning new things, I want to listen to people that do this, and I want to practice some of those ideas to a jam track. So here we go. Here's a jam track, Jimi Hendrix inspired. That's called a vamp. So much of what we can do also is we can explore sound. This goes beyond just notes. We want to learn to play in key, but we also want to explore sound and noise and feelings and crying on your instrument and just shouting and screaming and all the things that a poet would do when they're talking about their reality. You place that on your instrument, and that's what we learn from the blues musician. All right, so with that said, That's a little box pattern, bunch of box patterns that we could use. Another really useful box pattern is this. So something like that would be like a... Now, the next, I call that the, like the London Calling kind of box pattern. It's in thousands of songs. But the Clash did it in London Calling. Mick Jones. Also, this thing is called the house pattern. Now, all of these patterns are something, this is what I'm saying, take an inventory. You should have like 10 different places to play melodies and such, and then stringing them together. And then listening to players that do that and trying to steal some of their licks and some of their mind for phrases. If you've watched our earlier lessons here, Boomer Guitar Sessions. Tony Iommi, Carlos Santana, Mick Taylor, Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix, of course. All right? So, moving up the neck. So that would be... Now everybody knows this 12th position minor pentatonic. Now, what they don't always know is that 1-4 finger combination on the 4 bottom strings is usually not used. Okay. I've recently heard this called the diagonal pentatonic, something that is used instead of also, those are notes in the key of E minor. So for what we can do to prepare for future reference is take inventory on lots of E minor pentatonic shapes all over the neck. All right. That's a start. Try to make some phrases around it, but then as quickly as you do that, and that you can do in the span of an afternoon, as quickly as you do that, listen to players to make use of these sounds. As soon as you take inventory, what you can then do is listen to the players that you know make these sounds. Listen to improvising players. Don't just listen to players that can barely play their instruments. Okay? You want to leave punk rock, unless you just want to play chords. But that's not the purpose of level 3 rock band. We don't want to be held back. We want freedom. All right. This is Rod, Boomer Guitar Sessions. Hope you got a lot out of this. As always, I believe in you. You can do this. None of this is impossible. I'm hoping I make this path, these things easier for you conceptually. Get it in your head. So we can get it in your head, and it's not as hard as you think, but you should be excited. I am. All right. See you next time. Hi, this is Rod from Boomer Guitar Sessions. I personally wanted to thank you for being part of our community. If you like what we're doing here and you want to see more of it, please hit the like, subscribe, and share. And this helps me spread my musical messages to all over the world. Thank you. I appreciate you. And always remember, you can do this.